Welcome back to the 2MoreTakes podcast, everybody. I'm a Jack.
Hello. I'm the Joe.
He's the Joe. This is RoboCop theme. That should give it away automatically, unless you, of course, read the title of the episode. I would have done one for Total Recall, but not exactly like a memorable theme.
Yeah, that doesn't really have a theme tune, that one. And Starship Troopers does, but I can't remember what it is.
Oh yeah, I know the Starship Troopers one.
Do you wanna...
Starships were meant to fly!
No.
That's the payoff of my fucking gag.
Right. You've arrived today in a singing mood, then.
Okay. Anyway, to get back on topic already.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're doing the Paul Verhoeven, the three famous Paul Verhoeven films.
Yeah. The three sci-fi films that came out between 1987 and 1997.
Yes, according to
RoboCop
the release date
is
a
bit funny.
That's like
Not sure if it's 87 or 88, but it says 87 on.
Most sources say it's 88. I think a lot of written down sources say 87. So probably again we speculated briefly just before the start of the podcast that basically it was evidently a limited release. Either that, or maybe we had stumbled across incorrect sources. But
yeah, it's probably
I can obviously fix this. I can fix this solution because I'm just going to look at the back of the box, which I have all three of here. So
it depends where your copy came from.
Sound of RoboCop.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll have a look. 1987, it says on the back of the box, so it is 1987. It's an official Blu-ray, so it's so official, and it's like a re-release, because I'm pretty sure this was a 4K re-release, because it has the I got RoboCop and Total Recall Blu-rays for Christmas, by the way. That's why I have two of them already. Mm-hmm. I bought Starship Troopers because it was fairly cheap on Amazon for this podcast, so I thought I might as well have all three of them because I think just off the bat I very much like these films. So I very much like Paul Verhoeven as a filmmaker. I think you do too, Joe.
Yeah, so I think you'd seen all three before, right?
I had, but it had actually. It's a weird order in which I watched them because I watched them almost in complete opposite order. Although it's actually it's basically the non-adjoining order because I watched Starship Troopers first, actually. That was the first one I ever saw, and because I was so young, I didn't get it, and I just thought, why is there this film about fascist soldiers, and why are the characters so fucking weird? And then I watched RoboCop, which you would have naturally assumed that if I was going in that order, I probably would have just stumbled upon Total Recall. But I'll tell you what I did see first. I saw the Total Recall remake first, and that was terrible. So I didn't watch the original for years.
Yeah, I've heard bad things about the remake in comparison to the old one.
It's just mediocre is the issue. It's not like a bad movie. It's just it
doesn't look terribly interesting.
I guess similar to the RoboCop reboot, but I watched RoboCop second, and that was I just fell in love with RoboCop. I think it's infamous as the most famous one for a reason. I think, even though it is the simplest of all of them. But and then I watched Total Recall maybe 2 years ago. So I watched them in a really weird order. But Starship Troopers I saw when I was 14 or something. Total Recall I saw 2 years ago, and then a year before that was RoboCop. But I'd always been familiar with Paul Verhoeven's work just because of Starship Troopers. But besides that, I guess should we just move on to?
Well, I was just going to say
sorry, do you want to? I know I took up a bit of time with that talking about the Blu-rays I have in front of me.
No, this is cool. I've got or we've got at home. I've got. I don't know if we have Total Recall because I'm thinking about it now. Obviously, I've rewatched Total Recall with you, or I hadn't seen it before actually, but.
did like a weird it did like a weird sort of like I played it on my Blu-ray player.
You streamed
and we streamed it.
So. But the other two, Starship Troopers and RoboCop, had on VHS for who knows how long, and I've probably watched them 100 times since I was maybe about 5 years old. Because I like how you say, oh, you know, I watched Starship Troopers when I was younger and I didn't really get some of it. And I'm like, I watched it when I was like definitely younger than 10 years old. And I even back then I'm like, yeah, I remember kind of getting the whole fascist soldier thing a little bit back then. And I'm like, oh.
Well, I think we've established, at least through 2 episodes of this podcast, Joe, that you are definitely smarter than me.
No, I'm just saying I
am the bigger idiot out of the two of us, considering that we already agreed that like I like the most garbage.
Yes, sometimes. But yeah, and then obviously RoboCop as well is like not really films I would recommend to under 10-year-olds, but I guarantee I saw it before I was 10 years old. Because I just remember, I watched all sorts of films when I was younger. I love films.
Yeah, dude, honestly, if I would totally recommend RoboCop to like a 10-year-old. Maybe like a 10-year-old in like the 80s or the 90s. Because it's like these are all like forbidden fruit is what this feels like. They feel so much like that. Interesting enough, by the way, there's several. I mean, there's obviously sometimes there's similar cast in all these films, but I saw, you know, the general from Starship Troopers.
Yes.
This is a funny little anecdote. It's not really funny, but I saw the general from Starship Troopers, the one they find on that planet, who's like in the freezer or something. He was on an episode of House that I was watching recently.
Oh, yeah. Turns out you start watching something with some actors in, and you see these like one or two of these actors pop up in like 7 different films or TV series that you're watching currently, but. Well,
especially as an adult, I've noticed them a lot more, just because obviously my brain's more developed now. But as a kid, I think I just saw all these people. I was just like, it's like number 562 white guy in Hollywood. He looks exactly the same as everyone else, besides like. I guess like Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt always looked like Brad Pitt to me. I could always identify him.
No, I had a few.
Probably because I was jealous of his how handsome he was.
No, I had a few actors that I recognised, but yeah, I'm still bad with recognising actors now. But yeah, so
I can identify actors better than like than my work colleagues some days. I don't have any now, but when I've been working jobs, I've it's been quite embarrassing. It's like I could talk to them for hours on the subject of like fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I can't even remember their name. I have to like fish for it in conversation. I feel so bad, dude, because I don't want to like. It's not like like some kind of malice. It's just like I'm just an idiot.
Well, okay.
But anyway, we spent like 10 minutes talking about nonsense. So I guess we should move on to RoboCop. Do you want to introduce RoboCop as like just as a synopsis and that, or?
Yeah, I'll have a little talk about. But yeah, so let's begin the propaganda trilogy, as I like to refer to it, because all 3 of these films have a lot of similarities. But RoboCop. 1987 is the official release, apparently, of that, although there are a few conflicts with that information.
It says it on the box. I'm taking the box's word.
Yeah. No, it says 87 here. So, RoboCop is a sci-fi. What's the term?
It's more of an action film.
It's
really.
An action film. It's definitely near future, but what is it?
It's just Detroit, really.
Detroit.
It's like a really. I guess it's sort of the. Obviously, Detroit is obviously renowned for its like gang violence and stuff, and it's like I guess it's overbearing police force and stuff. Yeah. But
I know there's a word for it that I'm trying to think for. Words
I can't think of it either, but. But regardless, it's the city that's basically renowned for crime.
It's like Gotham City, but rubbish. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a modern version of Gotham City, because I know that's obviously very gothic in that.
Yeah, no, it's really just, bland American city covered in crime and rubbish. It's
the perfect place to set RoboCop, really. Because you couldn't set RoboCop in like Washington or something. Maybe New York, but New York would be a bit too.
Well, Detroit and New York are similar-ish sort of settings anyway. It's just New York's a bit nicer, a bit more well known. But yeah,
you couldn't see RoboCop going around though. I think RoboCop, he's such an extreme measure as a character and a product that you could only introduce him in like the most violent place on earth. Which they don't really just put on Detroit. They set that up with the actual movie and how they weave in the crime narrative.
So because basically, overrun city, cops are getting into all sorts of trouble. Like there's a lot of cop killers around, and that's pretty much how the film kicks off. Is they got a new, I don't know if it's deputy or whatever, new officer,
just a new officer,
to the force, and
Murphy,
Murphy, and the partner, can't remember her name.
Oh, I don't remember.
She's not in it enough.
Yeah. Well, she's in like the first 3 movies, and like I think it's just that I think if I rewatched them and I rewatched it till about the second movie, I'd probably know her name. But I think after that, it's just that Murphy is just such a recognizable
Well, she says
name.
his name a lot, whereas he obviously he gets spoilers. He gets murdered, obliterated.
In like the most brutal fashion as well in any movie. Like.
As I said, you watched this when I was very young, and there were a couple of scenes even back then. I'm like, that's pretty disgusting.
Maybe the hand being shot off with a shotgun.
Yeah, he literally bits of him get blown off. He gets gunned down, limbs missing, and then just dead. But they basically attempt in the sci-fi setting of it, near future. They try and save him, and they turn him into RoboCop, and then he becomes this,
the ultimate symbol of capitalism and consumerism.
Yeah, it is. This is the thing. It's amusing with these films. They're so sort of capitalist in their sort of like so many adverts for like. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of all 3 of the films have a lot of like TVs with adverts on, and it's weird because they're like these old TVs with like these futuristic adverts on. And it's like you've got these thick TV boys that they try and hide how thick they are. They try and make them thinner in some of the films. But
I think most of the time they just put them to walls so that obviously it's backed into something so it looks like a smaller screen, but or like a thinner screen. But when we were not to go on to Total Recall, not to go on to that movie, but just to briefly reference.
Yeah, I was going to mention.
I remember when we were talking about what we were going to watch for this episode, and I remember obviously mentioning that. In RoboCop and Starship Troopers, the propaganda angle, or at least the televised advertisement stuff, is incredibly prominent in those 2 films. But I did not at the time. I did not remember whether or not Total Recall had a whole bunch of them.
It really does, doesn't it?
That is the case.
There's
not as much.
No, I'd say it's the least out of all 3. I don't know, it's on a similar level to RoboCop.
Well, that's the thing, is that all these films are very similar, but they're also very different.
Yeah.
Like, Total Recall is probably the most different, but if you also look at the differences between RoboCop and Starship Troopers, they're also very different, because RoboCop is a story about fighting against the system, whereas Starship Troopers is about being complacent in it.
Yes, I would agree with this. But I love how each one takes the same sort of premise of... RoboCop starts with, like... I think it starts less capitalisty until you get to let's make a super. Well, yeah, they have one scene at the beginning where they're thinking about making. There's a big company, trying to make this like ultimate crime fighting machine to make a lot of money basically because
the
supply and demand.
Sorry, the Ed 209 is what.
They have some really bad prototypes in RoboCop.
The infamous Ed 209.
Yes.
They can't go downstairs.
No, they start with him, and I think it's right at the beginning of the film they show their first prototype of Ed, don't they?
Yeah. And that's the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, and
they
they test him out, and they're like, hey, point a gun at him, and he's like, drop the gun. It's this massive robot as well. So it's like rather intimidating. And then he drops the gun, and he's like, you have 10 seconds to comply. And it's like...
Yeah, it just keeps counting down.
Oh, guess he's going to die then. And he just gets gunned. Doesn't he fall out? He might fall out.
No, that's the main villain.
That's later, but I just remember basically he gets gunned down.
He gets gunned down into the the mega city prototype thing.
Yeah.
He gets and then when he's on it, he just gets eviscerated as well.
Yeah, he gets obliterated. A lot of violence in the brutal violence.
Just to clear it up with the audience, this is just like a regular boardroom employee.
I was going to say how afterwards, other than the initial "oh, everyone back up," he's going to get gunned down, and then everyone's like, "So, how about this prototype, huh?" And they just carry on so casually.
Well, what it is?
He's still got some kinks to work out.
Our main villain. He goes up to the what's his name? He's our main villain. I don't think they have it here.
Names are hard, but yes, main villain.
Oh, I think Danielo Hurley. I don't know what his name is, but I think he's his name's like it doesn't matter. But basically, the main bad guy of the film, I think his name's Jones. I think that's what his I think that's the last name of his character. But basically, he goes up to he goes up to basically what is essentially should be the main villain. But in the first film, he's kind of presented as I guess. He's okay. It's just the old man.
Oh, yeah.
In the second film, they kind of play up the angle that he's also just as evil. They play that up enough. But in the first film, he's just I guess there. But our main villain, he just goes up to the head honcho boss, and he's just like, "It's just a glitch." And then that it's just for the old boss. You get the infamous line, "Just a glitch."
Yes. The man just died due to that glitch, but I'm sure it'll be fine. But yeah, he's somewhat
software update.
Yeah, because there's one guy is somewhat basically the guy who's in charge of the company is somewhat okay, isn't he? It's just the guy just underneath him until the next film. Yeah,
exactly.
But
that's what I mean. Is that that's the one negative I'd say about RoboCop. Really, is just that it's super simple in a way that it kind of makes you think more so than putting it in your face with the first one. Because you could still arrive at that conclusion of he's actually got no blood on his hands, but that's just because he's sort of willfully ignorant of things. But he is just as bad in a way because he owns the company. He lets all his research go on. He allowed RoboCop to be created when Alex Murphy dies, and they turn him into the walking tank. Yet he's also pretty slow. RoboCop. And then that's another thing. That's another reason why RoboCop can't be remade, and why they didn't successfully do it, is because now you have to make him fast. It's like the zombie again. We're going back to the zombie. If it's sometimes that can work with the zombie, it can if you make them fast. We make RoboCop fast. It's just like
no. There's something different about
all of it.
There's something different about the old sort of 80s, 90s sort of. The word I was looking for earlier, dystopian, is slightly dystopian.
Dystopian,
future.
Yeah, that's all of these movies. Yeah. They're all heavily dystopian.
But it's like the chunky TVs that have these futuristic, because it's the conflict between the old and the new.
I'd buy that for $1. Yeah.
And as you said, RoboCop being this slow moving tank of a machine, but he's still somewhat slim. It's a human form.
He's a cowboy. He fires from the hip and stuff like that. It's so 80s in that respect as well, because it's it's an aesthetic that can only work in the time period it came out in. It came out at the perfect time, really, for it to have its impact.
Yeah.
Whereas the other films, you could sort of have them. I don't know. I think Starship Troopers you couldn't have nowadays, but I think Total Recall, that's actually perfectly fine to remake.
Again, though, I've never seen the RoboCop remake just because I like the old one so much that I'm I don't want to hurt my...
You're a wise man for that, really, Joe. That's
no, I love the classic RoboCop. And, again, this is an interesting one because it is dystopian future, machine cop, ultimate crime fighter, and then these, gritty sort of environments, criminals, corrupt capitalists, advertising, these crime-fighting
toxic
machines.
Waste man.
Yeah, there's a lot of, there's action, as you said, action film. It is pretty actiony, RoboCop. Yeah. There's a lot of,
It's more so actiony than the other ones. The other ones are more sci-fi like.
Well, Total Recall is a mix of both as well.
Really.
They're all action
I don't know. Actually,
sci-fis.
Starship
They're all
Troopers
action sci-fis, I'd say.
No, but what I mean is that RoboCop is more so an action movie because the sci-fi element of it is just sort of near future, whereas like the other ones are very distant future.
Yeah. RoboCop is the closest time frame to current.
You know what I like to think? I've only just thought about this now, but I like to think that all of these exist in the same like continuity, and it's literally the progression of time.
Yeah, it is like an alternate reality.
Yeah. Because you start off with companies starting to gain power, then you have company has complete power, then you have forget companies, whatever did have control of this society, it's now just a pure fascist fantasy. But anyway, RoboCop though, it's iconic for a reason. The costume looks great, the action itself is shot competently. It's not like John Wick, but again, remember this is a time where we didn't have John Wick. This is a time where
it's very good.
It looks very good. It's a very simple premise. It's just like, okay, we're going to show RoboCop pointing and shooting at somebody. We'll cut to them. We cut to them. We cut back to RoboCop looking at them, and then he shoots, and then we cut back to them dying.
And I love
it's a very simple way of filming it, but it looks great. And
I love because as you said, the cowboy aesthetic that RoboCop kind of has, which I don't think I ever noticed when I was little. That's one thing I never did notice because I wasn't really into cowboy films as much, unfortunately. But now that having seen some of the classic cowboy films, I can recognise. No, they zoom in on the gun when he, like they would in a western. He pulls it out and then they zoom in.
He even does the flippy thing,
close shot,
the spinny thing.
Yeah,
he does the spinny thing, which I was watching this with my dad and a friend of his a while ago. But anyway, but they were asking how does the female lead know that that's Murphy in the RoboCop suit? And I'm like, do you not remember when he spanned the gun? That's how she knows it's him. It's set up and paid off. Yeah. Paid off. It's like it is intelligently. Again, it's like I think I would put RoboCop right up there with Die Hard. It's just like it's a simple premise, but it's executed in an intelligently simple way.
It's done very well, and obviously there's the thing of like how Murphy kind of loses his humanity a little bit, and he's trying to fight to figure out who he is because he's now a robot and stuff. It's quite interestingly done, some of it. And
it's a company literally turning a human being into a machine, and then that person regaining their humanity, and that's again why RoboCop on its own is fantastic, but why the sequels kind of don't work in a way, because it's like, again, it go back. It's like Finn in Star Wars. They keep resetting his arc in films. Like he's just. It's like the same with RoboCop. Like every new film, it's just like okay, he's got to accept his humanity again. I mean, the cops aren't exactly looked upon favorably as well.
No, I was going to say some of the cops in RoboCop are corrupt as well. It doesn't, but it shows a mix of stuff. Anyway,
well, they're all vying for they have a union and stuff because they've been supposedly treated so shite by funding and that, so they're going to go on strike.
Yeah,
and they do go on strike in the movie. That's how a crime wave starts happening. But and that's another good example of just set up and payoff. They set up that in the start everyone's looking to organize a strike, and then that's the perfect time for the climax of the movie to come.
Yeah.
RoboCop has been taken out of the picture because he's been shot at by the SWAT team and the army or whatever. The police are trying to save his life because the police actually sort of on a personal level, not on a personal level,
but
they on an anecdotal level, they know him.
Yeah, and he's like an idol to them, really, isn't he? He's like yeah. Because even when he is just Machine Murphy, he does have a flair to him that is just like, okay, I'm going to stop with all this bullshit, and I'm just going to punch through walls and take out hostage takers, and I'm just going to do crime fighting. Yeah, dead or alive, you're coming with me.
Yeah, an infamous, fantastic line. That's another thing, is that they're all just very. I think that's another reason why he selected Arnold Schwarzenegger for his next film.
Yeah,
it's the perfect. Speaking of that,
yeah, Total Recall. I was going to say, I was wondering because. Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger, next film.
Yes. Shall I introduce this one, or do you want to?
Well, I was going to say one thing. You can talk about the film. I was going to say one thing.
Go on.
This came out in 1990, but I was going to say RoboCop, as you said, Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously for the next film, but I was wondering if Paul Verhoeven might have looked to maybe, because there's not that many big actors in RoboCop that not as big as Arnold Schwarzenegger or... you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger would make, because he went from Terminator to these Total Recall and other films, Predator. He would have made probably the ideal RoboCop to an extent. But Predator came out
same year?
87, I believe, same year as RoboCop. So I'm wondering if there was a conflict there, and he's like, would have gone with Arnold Schwarzenegger as RoboCop, you know, Terminator.
No, that would never work.
I don't think it would, but I think that would have been what he would have gone for if he could have.
I think maybe, but I mean, here's the thing. Like, Peter Weller is just, he's just RoboCop.
Yeah, he is. I love Murphy from, Yeah.
He's just like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It just would have been too cartoony.
Yeah.
Like, could you have imagined like him trying to act as well? Like, it's the physical performance as well. Like, it's you totally buy that this man's limbs are made out of like robotic parts.
But anyway, we get on to Total Recall.
So 1990, as you said, Total Recall is the most different out of the three of these films in the respect that its main plot isn't really surrounded with the main message of the film. Like all of the consumerist stuff is in this film, but it's more just an adventure film, and it's more like not to sort of sound like simple when I say this, but like it's deliberately dreamlike, like it's a very interpretive,
which plays
film.
into the story slightly,
which is I think a really good aspect of it, because I don't think I think there was. I'm trying to think about the remake. I don't really want to talk about it, but I'm pretty sure that there was a moment where they played up that angle, but I can't remember it. I think maybe he was in like an ambulance at some point, and his like pretend wife was like was talking to him. It's so difficult because that film sort of it sort of has the issue of like, I'm pretty sure from memory both of the female leads look exactly the same. I might be wrong, but it's been so long since I think I literally saw it the year after it came out, which was like came out like 2011. I'm pretty sure 2010. But But anyway, the main film though, the actual original film, the Total Recall. Me and Joe watched this together. We rewatched it together as opposed to rewatching the other films at our own time.
It was my first viewing of it. It's the only one I hadn't seen.
Yes. This is the second time I had seen it. I've seen RoboCop and Starship Troopers far more.
Yeah.
But as I said, Total Recall is relatively recent for me as well. I have to admit, we'll talk about how we felt about this film very soon. But just to give a brief plot overview, basically, Douglas Quaid, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. Arnold, yes, this is the
film.
like Predator. This is the film that everyone learned how to do Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice from.
I didn't know what I was missing.
This is the film. That's the get to the chopper. You know, it's like.
No, Predator's one thing, but I'd say Total Recall on the R scale is way above.
This is why everyone does the R's, because it's like normally you just do a quote, but with Arnold, you because he screams so much in this film and he does it so it's so comical. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But
it's basically it's a space action adventure film. It's mostly just an action film, but there is differently to the remake. This film takes, and this is another thing I was weirded out by watching this for the first time, because obviously you watch the remake, it's completely set on Earth in a dystopian future land. You watch the original, and most of the film is on Mars, which is I had never. It's weird to think that most of the film is on Mars, just from an outsider's perspective, because it's like, I mean, just already it's like, you would present Earth in a dystopian way, but traveling to Mars for the time that it came out in is such a weird idea, and it's so like, I don't want to give it too much credit, but it's a really inventive idea for like a cyberpunk aesthetic type thing. It's like. Yeah. Because it's the ultimate. Again, it's like I think that's why in cyberpunk fiction, which is Total Recall is more of a cyberpunk movie really than the other two. But I think that's why in cyberpunk fiction that companies going to Mars is such a common thing, because it's like not only is it such a cool aesthetic of like having a corporate office on like the red planet of Mars, but I mean it plays into the atmosphere, like. The lack of atmosphere, you know. It's basically there's so many elements. There's like weird alien ruins. There's a company that owns Mars.
And
that's the company that's Arnold Schwarzenegger's real identity.
Yeah.
He's a sleeper spy. He gets his real spy name is like something like Hauser or something.
Yeah,
I don't know what
Hauser.
his first name is.
Yeah. But yeah,
But his last name's Hauser, and he gets involved in this big spy threat thing after he goes to like a memory replacement service to get like a holiday.
The premise is that the actual him lost his memory somehow. I don't remember if they actually explained that or not, but yeah, he's lost his memory, and then they put him in like make believe life where he's got a fake wife and fake job and stuff, but he's just living like a few weeks of like this life, thinking he's lived that his whole existence, and then he's like, again, the propaganda, advertisement, capitalist stuff. There's this company that does like dream vacations where you literally go to sleep and dream that you went, but it feels like real life. So
yeah, it's called the actual company is the name of the film. It's called Total Recall.
Yeah, Total Recall.
It's called Recall.
And then Total Recall
totally recalls
is if you remember. Yeah. So, and he's like, I like this idea of Mars because the real him has been to Mars before. He goes to the dream thing, and then it all goes wrong. He starts to remember things. And then he goes on this
So they
soul.
wipe him completely.
Yeah,
of his
they
time
try and wipe
there.
him, but then the people that were watching him, suspicious. He starts getting involved in little fights, and it all starts coming back to him. Then they're worried about Total Recall, where he remembers what his old life was.
That was another thing that was. This is another thing that I never get upon rewatch. The guys who mug him initially, or they try to kill him initially.
Yeah.
The construction workers. Yeah. Were they working with the company, or were they working with the freedom fighters, terrorists on Mars?
Oh, I would assume
because they call him Quaid. That's the thing, and the terrorists on Mars call him Quaid because they know him as Quaid. Oh no, sorry, no, they do know him as Hauser. Sorry, no.
I assume
they could work for either of them.
I think it's just because I think that might just be a film thing where it's so early and you don't know his actual name yet. The audience that they're using his old
that might
name.
Be it, yeah.
But I think they are just part of because he's being watched by everyone that's around him at that point. So I assume they're all part of the same company at that point. I would assume.
At the same time, though, like the company only gets involved when his wife calls them. So that's why I assume that perhaps that was the case of like, because they got him the job, but at the same time, like his wife was the one watching him.
It doesn't really matter anyway because he shoots all of them, so you'll never know.
I know, but that's like a little detail that I always get hung up on because I just don't know. But yeah. Anyway, I guess we should move on to like the rest of the just I mean, what do you think of the film in general?
Well, here's the thing, right?
You said that you had a bit more of a muted response to it.
I enjoyed it, and there was a lot of good stuff. I think it's my least favourite. I'll be honest. I definitely prefer the other two, but then I'd seen them more as well. It's the most over-the-top, unrealistic sort of action sci-fi in Total Recall, and of course it's got Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, so it's really over the top and. It's the owls and all of that, and I'll be honest, some of the worst acting I've seen by Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's almost room-level acting, I'll be honest.
I mean, Predator is him at his best, really, because he's just being utilised, like, perfectly. And in this, like, he doesn't have the qualities to pull off, like, a complete emotional journey, but because it's the 80s and it's Arnold...
No, it's very...
Despite the fact that he doesn't have the capabilities of a great actor, because he has so much good screen charisma and screen presence, I don't really mind.
Yeah, I think it's very good.
I can sort of because the other actors are sort of making up for it, really, because they are doing a really good job.
But I enjoy it in the sense that it is, when you say it's like a dream sequence, it's this over the top action film with completely ridiculous scenes in it. I mean, characters should die that don't die in this film. There's the whole thing where they're on Mars. Oxygen is important, and there's well-known sequences of people suffocating to death, and their eyes popping out of their skull.
You were not happy about the sort of the bit just before the end when the two leads get blown out into the atmosphere, and they're still like literally alive and like they're able to see.
Also, some of the effects I'd say are the weirdest effects in this film. Like RoboCop has some really good effects. Some of them are a bit weird, but and dated. But this one has some really like. There's a sequence where he's disguised as a woman, and I'm like, that can't be. I know they're going for it, but that can't be Arnold Schwarzenegger in that woman, and it is. And it's literally just they change the actor and they pretend that it's like this robot thing over the top of him.
It's
and
logic. That's
but
like,
it's so weird and doesn't
like,
make sense. And I hate.
I think if you're getting hung up on that detail, then I would not recommend Darkman to you, because that is I mean that's obviously more fantastical, but like it's more fantastical. Sorry, that's more of a word, but I mean, with this, like, I will admit that it doesn't help that they should have what they should have done with that is that they even build like the prosthetic thing to fit an Arnold head in there. I'm guessing they went with with a smaller one because because otherwise why else would they just not put his head in there? But in that case, they probably should have just built a bigger one and have him actually being inside there. But I will admit that face that like model of his head. That is the worst looking effect in all of these movies, but I will say that there are other effects in Total Recall that look fantastic. Like the suffocating on Mars is cartoony, but it's almost in the range of the thing in that level.
Yeah, it's very extreme. And I'll be they linger on it so long that I'm like, it's been like a minute. They would have suffocated. Their eyes are popping out of their skull. They would be dead.
Yeah, they should at least gone blind or something. Really, but I think the issue is with that is that it's 80s action film logic. It's like dreamlike logic. Because as well, I think the reason why I really like this film is because I mean, again, like I said this while we were watching it. I said, "Oh my god, we've discovered another film that the film Joker is ripping off." Because this film has the American Psycho thing, not just the movie but also the book, the American Psycho, where it's got an ambiguous ending to it.
Yeah,
of whether or not these
you
events
don't know whether it was a dream
or whether
not.
or not it's a figment or something of his imagination. And that's an element that they play up throughout the film that really works. And you could even read the film as it's him in Recall, with the doctor character and his wife trying to help him, but his wife, because he portrays his wife as his character, those moments where she does try to sort of play up to him. Yeah. In the film, it's like, she's trying to manipulate him in a negative way, but
for all you know,
it could be portrayed as like it's her trying to break through that illusion.
It's actually just him in this dream sequence, having his little vacation on Mars, where he picks to be a spy in his little dream, and then he is a spy.
That's the perfect part about it.
And then his wife's like, you need to wake up now. Shoot her. He gets. I'll be honest. He does change his mind quite quickly. He's like, "I'm a spy now," and that's the whole. I think that's the whole premise. Consider this a divorce. Oh, what was that other line? You think it's no? He has this hologram projection of himself that he uses to distract people, and they think it's him, and it's not.
You must think this is.
You must think this is still the real Arnold. It is. He shoots him in the head. It's like, oh my god.
Honestly, I know you said that. Obviously, the moment where they all shoot at him in the middle is not. That's again like
questionable
movie logic, where it's like, but I do love that end sort of like shootout in the sort of oxygen factory.
I love a good Arnold quip. There's plenty of those.
Again, I think some of that is purposeful though, because it's like when the drill comes after them, they should be dead. When Benny's in the drill. Benny's another great character. I hate his weird alien arm because it's disgusting, but that's with all the mutants. The mutants are all disgusting. That's another element, is that like this is like he took like the concept of toxic waste man and boosted it up to like 100.
Well, it's another.
We'll have an entire people of this.
It's another dystopian Detroit just on Mars. So but yeah, I really, one thing I wish it had though, that scene where he's in the disguise. Why was Arnold just not in makeup? I want to see female Arnold in makeup, like Mrs. Doubtfire.
I think that would be too much.
But I would have loved to see Arnold in like actually made up to be in disguise.
I mean, it would be hilarious, but I think the issue is
or,
that they would have recognized him immediately, and in as well, it's another sci-fi concept to have that is interesting at least. But again, like that is like an element where it's like they could have done something like a hologram a bit better or something. But I think that might be just down to what visual effects they could have done.
But that's the Owl film. It's very ridiculous action.
Do you want to introduce our next one?
Sure, I love this next one. So the next one came out a bit later, 1997. 10 years after RoboCop and 7 after...
He had a lot of films in between.
Yeah, he did have... But this is like his sci-fi, his well-known ones, I think. I don't know of any other Paul Verhoeven films.
He has done other films that are well-known, by the way, but we'll talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, I probably will recognise, but these are the 3 that we... Yeah. Starship Troopers is, again, continuingly proper... This is the real big propaganda one that I link to, because it starts off with all these adverts of join today, become a soldier on the...
Would you like to know more?
Would you? Oh yeah, the whole interactive adverts are like, would you like to know more? And it's like, this is what happens in space when you're a soldier. This is the alien threat.
Yeah, and I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part.
These little kids like, so I'm doing my part. No,
the bit where the kids are also like squashing bugs and that.
Yeah, it's so corny but quite amusing.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's like when I was a 14-year-old, that was the bit that got with me, because when this film was introduced to me, it was like, okay, look, my friend's going, look at this good bad movie. I had no idea that this was intentional, because the main cast is also, well, not all of them, but most of them are so flat. The main guy is Casper Van Dien.
Yeah.
He's just so vapid and like there's nothing there. His character there's only one moment of his character having depth, and that's at the beginning of the movie where he's unsure whether or not he wants to be a hateful soldier.
Yeah, I'd say in comparison to like Total Recall, where Arnold's acting's not great, this one I'd say everyone's acting is nothing special, but it's okay. But it's more about the rest of the film.
That Carl and Diz are quite good.
Yeah.
I don't know who the actress who plays Dizzy is, but obviously Neil Patrick Harris is very good for the time he's in the film. That's just because Neil Patrick Harris is talented, though.
Yeah, you got Dina Meyer is Dizzy.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Carmen and Rico, they're not fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
that's sort of the point.
They're all soldiers anyway. Basically, these young adults, sort of early 20s, they've just finished college or uni or whatever, and they're all getting their results back, and some of them are like, let's join up to be pilots or soldiers, or do their part for the military and fight the alien.
Our main hero
threat.
Rico is just like, he's like clinically stupid as well, but great. It's great. His best friend is a psychic genius called Carl. His girlfriend is like I guess like she's good at like mathematics and stuff like that. But she's also kind of like an ignorant person as well, because she thinks it's going to be really fun in space, and then all their friends start dying. But
they all join up, fight together in space against these massive alien bugs, which I'd say some of the CGI is alright. It's a little bit dated, but it's...
Honestly, I was going to talk about that. The effects in this movie, I absolutely love.
Because, some of it's really good.
Where like Carmen's flying in the small ship through like the defense grid ring around like the moon. I love all of that, and I gotta be honest. Like, just talking about this film, like this was the one I most recently watched in preparation for this, because I watched them in order.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest. It is my least favorite out of the 3. Not because I don't like it. I love all these films, but I think just because I do happen to like... I like them in order, really. I like them RoboCop, Total Recall, Starship Troopers. A bit of a spoiler for later. I should have mentioned that later. But the reason I mention that is just because like the actual visuals of Starship Troopers, though, is a more modern film.
Yeah.
I love the CGI. I love the world design. It's weird because this is a film about basically what if the Nazis won. It's basically what it is. And they're all dressed like SS officers and stuff like that. Like, Diz is literally wearing like a Wehrmacht uniform.
Yeah.
Like, I actually kind of... It's weird, because obviously I see this as like a satirical take on it. I don't like Nazis, but the fucking fashion sense in this movie, it's like... I don't know, there's something about like the design of the weaponry, the world, the ships... I kind of just love it.
It is that. It's
just on a visual level. This is an army I would love to play in Warhammer or something.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, it's
the Imperial Guard.
I don't want to say it matches a lot of other sort of sci-fi looks in sort of the minimalist, but futurist.
It's very similar to the Colonial Marines in Aliens, really,
and
the
even
design of the weapons too.
Aliens, the similar sort of look where it's again.
I reckon that's where he got the idea from it, just visually from.
Yeah, it's like a mix of like a dystopian mixed with sci-fi again, sort of that fixed. I was going to compare it to like the Command and Conquer video games as well.
Yeah,
they have similar aesthetic, and even RoboCop has a similar sort of style. It's just more present day, like the police in that in RoboCop, like the vehicles and stuff have a similar sort of matte, sort of bland but chic look ish. I don't know. There is similarities with a lot of stuff.
There is. I mean, again, I think that's why I stumbled upon the idea of like this being a progression of time.
Yeah,
we've done no research, by the way, into what Paul Verhoeven thinks of these films. We just wanted to talk about these films more so than the guy himself and what we thought about the style of it. But I mean, I'm totally. I'm totally in love with these movies, and they do come across with as the idea of like a progression of time in the same place. Even just in his how he's making these films, because again, it's like he starts off with a company trying to gain control.
Yeah,
company has control, and then forget companies. Like it's just a fascist like lifestyle government.
Just everyone do their part.
I mean, I mean, it's sort of like I just want to do their part, man. That's all they want to do. They just want to do their part,
even if it means getting eaten by bugs
or whatever the hell happens to that woman who wanted to have babies.
Oh, which one?
That's why I'm scared to watch the sequels. By there, I'm scared that we're gonna have like a Hudson moment, like you get in Colonial Marines.
Yeah.
But it's very similar to the Day of the Dead. Sorry, the Of the Dead trilogy that we were talking about recently. Well, the first episode, but second episode for the listeners.
Yeah,
but,
the zombie.
It's very similar in that they have a progression of time in them. Again, it's like starts off with zombie apocalypse has just begun, middle of zombie apocalypse, after zombie apocalypse. It's the same sort of thing, same sort of deal here.
It could actually be
why
seen
they
like
work
that.
so well as a trilogy. But yeah. But the plot of the film, it's just like...
It's very simple.
War. It's all it is.
It's just war. There's some love triangles in there, and
that's another thing that's different from the other films, is that like it's like there's like romance in that. And I gotta be honest, like as much as the acting from many of the cast isn't fantastic, I do actually give a shit about the cast. I care about the characters.
No, it's very simple and
yeah.
And I love
because they do have they're not. It's not simple as like they're just all bad guys, because the way that the film. That's another reason why I think not just me as a kid, but also why a lot of people probably didn't get this film, and why a lot of people initially thought this was some sort of film coming out in support of fascism. I think the issue was that, unlike the other ones, it's on the nose, but in a different kind of way. It's like, okay, we don't have characters that go against the system in this. We have characters. Like, the characters that go against the system are Rico's parents, and they get hit by an asteroid in the first, 30 minutes of the film. Or actually, no, first 50 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I checked the time mark. But anyway, but whereas, like, Total Recall and RoboCop, it's always about a person going against the system. That's why another reason why I was saying that each of these films could sort of be put in, like, twos. Like, RoboCop and Starship Troopers for how they stylize things.
Yeah.
Total Recall and Starship Troopers for the sci-fi aspect, and then RoboCop and Total Recall for the person going against the system aspect. Whereas Starship Troopers, I think a reason why people didn't get it is because it openly sort of has characters that just sort of love the system, and I can't help but feel for those people in a way, because Paul Verhoeven was trying to be highbrow as he went along, not in his presentation of these elements, but in what he was trying to say. I guess in his presentation of Starship Troopers, but the other two films are not. They are very... it's very below the surface in the other two films, whereas Starship Troopers really is just like... If you're a dumb person, you're not going to get Starship Troopers. But then again, as well, like it's such a niche thing, because it's such a simple premise at the same time, but also it's not exactly an intelligent movie, but it's also not a stupid movie either. It's in the perfect sort of, in my eyes, the perfect sort of niche. But I think the issue is that, again, that's why it couldn't have come out in any other era now. Because I think your average Trump supporter, or like your average trailer trash, is going to look at Starship Troopers and go, "Oh, I like that film because it's like what I want to see as a future." Whereas like what Starship Troopers is it's basically it's the opposite of Star Trek, which was the idea of an optimistic future.
Yeah.
Starship Troopers was like, okay,
a bleak,
like we're just got
look into the future.
The worst shit ever.
Watch as our military gets obliterated by giant bugs. Watch as our planet gets bombarded by meteors from that planet. Yeah.
It's okay because our characters remain friends till the end, Joe. But they are friends in SS officer uniforms, like. Yeah, they've captured like a helpless creature. Well, not helpless, but like they've captured a creature that's like it's afraid, and they're all like shooting guns up in the air.
Although it's a conflict of this.
It's giving into fear as
weird,
well. It's giving into fear and hate.
Brain-sucking bug that learns about humans from sucking their brains out.
Yeah,
and then they capture it, and they're like, it's afraid, and it's like, well, yeah, I guess it would be, but also. Now the humans.
That's another thing that's so weird about the film is it's too goofy in some respects with its like sexual violence from the bug angle, because early on there's like a bug that like whisks away one of the like the radio man or something like that, and that's how Rico gets promoted temporarily to sergeant.
Yeah. Well, he watches as
because he's corporal in the squad, and then he gets made into sergeant. But then he kills. Michael Ironside, who has that scar, by the way, on his head. I didn't realize that scar on his face was actually real when we were watching Total Recall, but I rewatched Starship Troopers, and I was like, oh god, that's real. I guess, like, poor dude.
He looks like a gruff guy, though. He suits the part.
Yeah, he looks like a gruff guy. But he obviously kills the radio man, but just as he's killing the radio man, like it appears that the bug is like penetrating him from the back. And then there's obviously the girl who wants to get pregnant gets taken away and like gets dragged away.
Everyone gets torn to pieces. But
then at the end of the film, we take like a syringe and we like shove it into the vagina mouth of the brain bug, and like the censored thing come up. It's like it's like, what are you trying to do, dudes? It's like it's funny.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's funny to see that, but it's just weird because it's like there's so many different like. Again, I think that's why a lot of people got confused with this film, and I've gotten confused by Paul Verhoeven in the past, is that he's such a unique filmmaker, and that he's not trying to explain things to you, but because of that, in some respects, he's quite alienating.
Yeah, I'd say all three of these films, to different extents, have that sort of weird, but, these overemphasized parts that, are sort of unbelievable and weird, but very entertaining, or I don't know. They're a weird mix, aren't they? Really.
And I guess just to sort of as we're like, because I think we're ending the discussion now on Starship Troopers, because we're coming to an end now. But I just wanted to mention before we end it off, by the way, because. There are some other films that you might be familiar with, that other people might be familiar with, but the other big film that Paul Verhoeven directed, which I have not seen, but is obviously very infamous among the film community, is Basic Instincts.
I've heard of it, haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's the film with the infamous scene where a lady flashes a cooter to the camera. But I'm pretty sure that stars the same actress as the. But I'm pretty sure it's the same person who played Quaid's wife.
Yeah, probably. There's a lot of repeating actors in Paul Verhoeven's films. So. Yeah. Well,
the bad guy is the same in both RoboCop and Total Recall, which is another link. But and then you have like Michael Ironside.
They take the bad guy from Recall.
He comes into
becomes
Starship
a sergeant in Starship Troopers. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of as you said, there's a lot of carryover. The only thing that doesn't carry over is the protagonist. The protagonist actor. They're all different. And they sort of, if anything, they reverse. They go like as time progresses, they reverse in emotional depth.
I would agree with this. But then again, I think RoboCop is probably the most sort of standard film, even because it's like RoboCop's the most realistic, the most present day one, and that's saying something.
It's the most grounded for
it's
what
gritty,
it is,
and has some over the top bits, but it is actually the most believable out of all of them.
Yeah. I guess if we're getting on to into this, then how would you rate them? I know that I said that I rate them in release order. RoboCop is my favorite, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers.
I would also agree that RoboCop is my favorite. then I'd probably go Starship Troopers, then back to Total Recall, just because I've always loved Starship Troopers, but I do think RoboCop is better than Starship Troopers. RoboCop's really good.
I would by no means dunk on any of these films. I think that all three are fantastic
I even
movies.
enjoyed Total Recall. I've only seen it once. I'd have to rewatch it to get my full opinion of it. But I do think it's just some bits are a bit too far-fetched, and Arnold, it's not my favourite. I'd watch it as entertainment, but not as like...
I think once you've seen Predator, you've seen the perfect Arnold film already. So I think that's kind of what is a part of it as well. Yeah. But I think like when I saw Total Recall, when I continue to rewatch these films, I think that the thing is I'm kind of judging them on their own merits. It's not like the Of the Dead films in some respects, because they are so different in many respects as well as being same. Like they're unified by a governing theme of sort of a satirical sci-fi action take, but they're also about very different things. It's like I said, you can put them in twos really, or you could put them in singles because of how different the qualities can be.
They all have similar links to them, and then they all have their own little flares to them. So. But they're an interesting set of films, really.
I think, obviously, just for recommendations, I would recommend all of these films, but I would not recommend them to your grandparents. I would not recommend them to some of your parents, maybe, unless they're into these sorts of genres as it is. If your parents are into sci-fi action, and they don't mind a bit of violence on screen,
I would say there's a lot of extreme violence in some of them, and some grotesque stuff. There's a lot of violence
and there's a lot of sex. There's a lot of violence, a lot of sex, and there's just a lot of gore as well. Really, there's that's something that is sort of prevalent in all of them.
Yes.
I guess Total Recall's the least on it. Although still you have Benny's disgusting.
They kind of take it. They look at the mutants as more disgusting than the actual violence in that one. It's a bit weird, but
well, they're trying to portray the mutants as more sort of like an underclass that is exploited by the company. Not to the extent of some sort of race allegory, but to the extent of some sort of they've been exposed to the corporations waste and that, and
and also the lack of oxygen and the alien.
That was
thing.
It was the atmosphere basically was just so toxic that even in the protective domes and stuff, or the protective buildings on Mars, they just were still getting.
We've
exposed.
Had Toxic Waste Man, now have Toxic Air Man.
And then after that, we just have bugs.
Yeah, and then bugs. Just Toxic Bug Man.
Bugs. Bugs that we know nothing about the enemy, only that they stand for everything we don't.
They are bugs.
They are different
what if they
to
weren't
us, so
bugs?
we must kill them.
What if they were pretty things, and they still killed them?
Oh, you mean if they were alien women? Then all of the Redditors would be taking up their katanas and getting on a ship and moving over to where the aliens are to go and get alien waifus.
No.
It'd be Area 51 all over again. Except it wouldn't. Maybe just Area 51 is just one old lady gets through. But
no.
I guess we should cap off though. I guess okay. So thank you very much for listening to the most recent episode of 2MoreTakes.
Thank you all again.
Yeah, we will be releasing on a every fortnight sort of policy. So if we don't release on that policy on that schedule, please send us angry comments. And likewise, if you enjoyed, like and subscribe to the podcast. We always appreciate it. If you want to leave a comment, we'll by all means read it at this point. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you. Until next time. Yeah.